Clara Wynn was halfway down from the stalled passenger car when the man who had promised to marry her shoved her trunk into the snow and said loud enough for the whole platform to hear, "Put her back on the train. She is not worth winter feed." The train could not move until the rotary cleared the pass. The waiting room door was already locked, and darkness was coming. The trunk split open on the boards. A plain blue dress slid into the slush. Her schoolbooks scattered under the boot heels of strangers who looked away because looking away was easier than helping. Clara had ridden 3 days from Dakota with a letter in her pocket, a marriage promise in her satchel, and a foolish hope that a hard country might still be kinder than the house she had left. Victor Bram, the rancher's cousin who had met the train instead of the rancher, stood with his gloved hands tucked into his coat. He had read one line of the letter from her aunt, glanced at the faint scar across Clara's left palm from an old laundry burn, and made his decision before she had spoken 10 words. "I was sent for Mr. Bram," Clara said. Her voice shook, but she did not let it break. "The letter bears his name." "My cousin changed his mind when he heard you were no beauty and no fortune," Victor said. "The pass is closed. The train goes back when the rotary comes. You go with it." Behind him, station agent Abel Prout turned the brass latch on the warm waiting room door. A woman inside saw Clara standing in the snow. The woman looked at the split trunk, then at Prout, then lowered her eyes to the baby bundled against her shoulder. That was the first wound Clara understood in Elk Horn, not Victor's cruelty. She had known cruel men before. It was the quiet click of a door locked by a man who did not need to lock it. "My ticket is paid to Elk Horn," Clara said. "I have a right to shelter." Prout held up a black ticket punch that hung from his watch chain. "Station is full. Freight crew and paying families only. Bride traffic is not my trouble after rejection." Victor smiled at that. "There, hear the law of the rails." The wind lifted Clara's loose hair and threw ice against her cheek. Her left glove had torn when she tried to catch the trunk. She crouched to gather her books, and a boy of about 8 slipped out from behind a stack of milk cans. He picked up her primer before Victor's boot could crush it. He had brown hair under a too-large cap and a face sharpened by winter. He held the book against his chest as if it were something alive. "Micah," a man's voice called. The boy froze. A sled had pulled up beside the platform, 2 bay horses steaming in the snow. The man holding the reins was broad-shouldered, with a dark beard cut close and a gray wool coat patched at one elbow. He looked tired in the way lonely men look tired, not from one night without sleep, but from years of carrying all their words inside. Gideon Hale had come to the station with milk for the stranded passengers and oats for the railway team. Clara did not know him yet. She knew only that he stepped between Victor's boot and her fallen books without raising his voice. "The book belongs to her," Gideon said. Victor gave a short laugh, then let her carry it back east. Gideon looked at Clara, not at the scar, not at the burst trunk, not at the shame Victor had tried to hang on her. He looked at her face and waited until she stood. "Do you have somewhere warm to go, ma'am?" Prout answered before she could, "No one has room." Gideon did not move his eyes from Clara. "I asked her." The platform went quiet enough that the hiss of the train engine sounded loud. Clara held her torn glove in one hand and her dignity in the other. "No," she said, "I do not." Gideon nodded once. "My ranch is 6 miles. My housekeeper is my late wife's aunt. You can ride in the sled with her when I fetch her from the store. You will have a room with a latch, wages if you help with the school children snowed in at North Fork, and my word that no man there will claim you. If you choose the train when it opens, I will bring you back with your trunk whole." Victor's smile faded. "You cannot take another man's bride." Gideon's jaw tightened. "Then it is lucky I am offering shelter to a woman, not taking a bride." Micah came closer and held the primer out to Clara with both hands. "Please do not send her back," he whispered to his father. Gideon looked at his son, and something old and wounded moved across his face. But when he answered, he did not let the boy carry the choice. "That is not mine to decide," Gideon said. Then he looked back at Clara. "Ask her, not me." Every face on the platform turned toward Clara. For the first time that day, the next move belonged to her. Clara should have been too cold to feel anything but fear. Instead, she felt the strange pain of being asked, as if choice itself were a blanket someone had placed around her shoulders. "I will ride as far as your ranch," she said, "and I will work for every bite I eat." "Work is welcome," Gideon said. "Debt is not." That line cut through the little crowd. Prute's eyes hardened. Victor bent, snatched up Clara's broken trunk strap, and threw it onto the platform. "You will regret this, Hale. Bram money buys winter hay in this valley." "Then I will have to feed my horses honesty," Gideon said. He lifted Clara's trunk as if it weighed nothing, but he did not touch her without permission. When she climbed into the sled, Micah tucked her primer beside her and sat on the far edge, leaving space in the middle. That space spoke better than comfort. It said she was safe because no one crowded her. Prute watched them pull away. His black ticket punch swung against his vest. Clara noticed cold dust packed into the small teeth of it, though the station agent's hands were clean. The road to North Fork ran between snow walls and dark pine. Gideon drove with one hand and kept the other near the brake rope when the sled dipped. He did not ask about Victor. He did not ask why Clara had agreed to marry a man she had not met. Silence from him did not feel like judgment. It felt like room. After 2 miles, they stopped at the general store, where Gideon's housekeeper, Aunt Bess Rowley, climbed into the sled with a flour sack and one sharp look at Clara. "Rejected at the station?" Bess asked. Clara stiffened. "That was not accusation," Bess said. "That was diagnosis. Elk Horn has been sick with men deciding women's worth by the door they can shut." The storekeeper came to the porch with his ledger still open. He would not quite meet Gideon's eyes. "Mr. Prute sent word by freight boy," the storekeeper said. "No salt or lamp oil on North Fork account until he clears your station business." Bess's mouth tightened before we even reached the ranch. Gideon looked once toward Clara, then back to the storekeeper. "Put the flour on my cash tab." "You paid cash for milk cans this morning." "Then put back the molasses." Clara heard the cost in that small surrender. Prute had already begun charging Gideon for helping her. The storekeeper shifted his weight. He said the freeze could spread to oats if the bride trouble keeps drawing eyes. "Bride trouble has a name," Bess said. The man looked at Clara then, ashamed enough to lower his voice but not brave enough to change the ledger. That, too, told Clara what kind of valley she had entered. Kindness existed here, but fear kept its accounts neat. Bess climbed into the sled and tucked a lap robe over Clara's knees. "North Fork has a spare room. It has a key, too, though I never trusted keys as much as hinges. Hinges show whether a door opens both ways." Clara looked at Gideon before she could stop herself. He kept his eyes on the horses, but a flush touched the line above his beard. That was the first clean pull between them, not romance spoken aloud, not a promise, just the knowledge that he wanted her safe in a way that cost him something. North Fork Ranch appeared at dusk, a cluster of dark barns, a low house with yellow windows, and a schoolroom built onto one side where ranch children learned during the long snow months. The place did not look rich. It looked used, mendied, and stubborn. Micah jumped down first and ran to open the gate. He looked back at Clara as if he hoped she would like the ranch and feared hope at the same time. Inside, Bess showed Clara the spare room. It had a narrow bed, a washstand, and a little iron latch on the inside of the door. Gideon stood in the hallway, hat in hand, and placed a folded return fare on the small table by the lamp. "That is yours," he said. "Not a loan, not a bargain. If the train opens and you want to leave, you will not need to ask me for money." Clara touched the edge of the fare. No man had ever made leaving part of her safety before. "Why would you do that?" she asked. Gideon looked toward the kitchen, where Micah was pretending not to listen. "Because my wife died on a road she did not want to take," he said quietly. "I have no use for a house that keeps a woman by closing the world behind her." Then he stepped away before pity could grow between them. That night Clara ate stew at the kitchen table with Bess, Micah, and Gideon. No one asked her to tell the whole sad story for their supper. Bess talked about the school children snowed at nearby claims. Micah asked if she knew long division. Gideon listened more than he spoke. When Clara reached for the bread, her scarred palm showed. She almost pulled back, but Gideon set the butter crock closer without looking at the scar. It was such a small courtesy that it nearly undid her. After supper, Micah brought his slate. His numbers leaned like fence posts after a storm. Clara sat beside him and corrected them with chalk. Gideon watched from the stove, and for the first time since the platform, Clara saw something besides grief in his face. Admiration made him look younger. The next morning, the blizzard closed harder. Snow packed the north windows. Gideon hitched a team to carry milk and blankets back toward the siding, but before he could leave, 2 riders came through the gate. Victor Bram rode in front. Abel Prout followed on a railway mule, his black ticket punch still swinging at his vest. Bess muttered, "Trouble found the road just fine." Victor did not dismount. "Hale, the woman signs return consent and comes with us. My cousin will not pay a rejected bride's board bill." Gideon stood in the yard with one gloved hand on the horse collar. "There is no board bill." Prout lifted a folded paper. "Railway abandonment fee. Bride passenger transferred to private shelter. If she remains here, her sponsor is liable unless she signs refusal and returns east." Clara stepped onto the porch before Gideon could answer. Her heart beat hard, but her voice stayed steady. "Who wrote that fee?" Prout smiled. "Railway rules are not school lessons, miss." "No," Clara said. "School lessons are clearer. They have dates. That paper has none." Victor's eyes sharpened. Gideon glanced at her, not with fear that she had spoken, but with quiet pride that she had. Prout tucked the paper away too quickly. Gideon saw the motion and took one step down from the porch. "You have until sundown," Prout said. "Sign or Hale's freight credit freezes. No coal, no salt, no rail oats until spring." After the men rode off, Gideon went to the barn and drove his fist into a hanging feed sack hard enough to split the seam. Oats spilled at his boots. Clara followed him to the doorway, but did not enter until he saw her. "Your credit matters," she said. "So does your choice. I can sign and end this." "You can," he said, "but if you sign because he froze my account, that is not choice. That is a door locked from the other side." The words warmed her and frightened her. Wanting safety from a good man was one thing. Wanting the man himself was more dangerous, because hope could make a person foolish. Gideon knelt to gather the spilled oats. Clara took the second bucket and helped. Their hands brushed once in the grain. He pulled back first, not in disgust, but in restraint. "Clara," he said, using her name for the first time, "I will not turn kindness into claim." She looked at him over the torn sack. "And if I wanted to stay for more than kindness?" He went still. From the house, Micah called that Bess needed more wood, and the moment broke. But Gideon's answer stayed in his eyes long after he turned away. It was not no. It was not yet, because her road had to be open before his heart could be honest. By afternoon, North Fork became a shelter. 3 children from neighboring claims arrived with their mother after their roof beam cracked. A half-frozen drummer from the train came in with Gideon's hired hand. Clara turned the schoolroom into a warm corner, set slates on benches, and gave frightened children sums to steady their hands. She was useful before anyone decided she was lovable. That mattered to her. Micah watched her teach. He did not smile easily, but when a little girl cried for her mother, he brought his own blanket and set it beside Clara without being asked. Just before dusk, Bess found Clara at the pump room, staring at a black smear on the broken trunk strap Victor had thrown into Gideon's sled. "Coal dust," Clara said. Bess rubbed the grit between 2 fingers. Her hand went still. "Not stove coal," Bess said. "Red Bank seam, railway relief coal came from there. Prout said it never arrived." Clara saw the black punch again in her mind, its teeth packed with the same red grit. "Then why was his ticket punch full of it before he handled my trunk?" They took the strap to Gideon. He did not leap to proof. He asked what it meant in plain terms. "If the relief coal arrived and Prout hid it," Clara said, "then he is freezing the train and your ranch to force payments that are not owed." Gideon's face hardened. "And Victor helps because Bram cattle get cheap freight when Prout owes him." They needed a witness. Bess named me Larkin, the telegraph operator's widow who kept the line room. Me had seen freight come in and vanish for 2 winters, but her brother worked Prute's coal shed. Speaking could cost him wages and bunk space. Gideon went to find her at the siding. Clara asked to go. "It is dangerous," he said. "So is waiting while men decide what my safety costs." He gave one short nod. That was his trust test, not protecting her by keeping her behind a door, but trusting her to stand where the truth was. They rode out with Bess driving and Gideon beside the sled on horseback. Snow hit their faces. At the station, smoke came from the waiting room chimney, but the passenger cars were dark. Families huddled inside with blankets over their knees. Me Larkin opened the telegraph room door only a crack. She was thin, with iron-gray hair and ink on her fingers. "Go away," she whispered. "Prute is counting tickets." Clara held up the trunk strap. "Red Bank coal came here, didn't it?" Me's face changed, fear first, then shame. "I have no record," she said. "I did not ask what you wrote," Clara said gently. "I asked what you saw." Me looked toward the coal shed, then pulled the door 1 inch wider. "My brother stacked it at night," she whispered. "Prute moved half to Bram's private spur. The rest is under the old icehouse floor. He said if I spoke, Owen would be turned out before morning." Gideon removed his glove and set it on the doorframe, not touching me. "If you speak, Owen can bunk at North Fork until spring. That costs me hay and maybe freight credit. I am saying it out loud so you know it costs something." Me closed her eyes. From behind the shed came Victor's voice. "Hale, step away from that door." Victor and 2 men came around the coal shed. Prute followed with a lantern. His black punch swung as he walked. "You are interfering with railway property," Prute snapped. Clara put the trunk strap inside her coat before he could see it. Victor pointed at her. "She steals shelter, now she steals station gossip." Gideon stepped in front of Clara, then stopped himself and shifted beside her instead. The difference mattered. He did not hide her. He stood with her. "Me asked us to leave," Clara said before the lie could be spoken for them. "So we will." Prute smiled. "Good, sundown passed, freight credit freezes. North Fork gets no coal allotment, no salt, no rail oats." Gideon's hired hand, Amos Reed, who had followed with milk cans, swore under his breath. "Boss, calves won't make a week without salt." By nightfall, every child under Gideon's roof could feel the price of Clara's refusal. On the ride back, Gideon was silent until the ranch lights appeared. "I can sell 2 steers to the army post," he said. "Maybe get salt by wagon." "In this snow." "I said maybe." Clara heard the lie he was telling to keep hope from freezing. That night she could have taken the return fare and waited in the train for the rotary. It was the safer path. No one could call her ungrateful for leaving. No one could say she owed North Fork her life. Instead, after the house slept, she sat at the kitchen table with Bess and wrote lesson sheets for every child in the shelter. Then she wrote a second paper, not a legal complaint, but a plain list of what she had seen. Red coal dust in the ticket punch, Prute's false fee without a date, Me's fear, the hidden icehouse floor. Gideon came in from the barn at midnight and found her there. "Clara, you need sleep. I need to stop being carried from one man's decision to another. Tomorrow I am going to the icehouse." He stared at her. "Prute will be watching. Then he will see me choose." The room was quiet except for the stove. "I could lose the ranch," he said. "If I back you and fail, Micah loses the only home he remembers." That was the truth between them. His risk had a child's name, but the child was not doing the emotional work. Gideon was. He had to decide whether safety meant keeping the ranch untouched or making it the kind of home that deserved to survive. "Then do not back me because you pity me," Clara said. "Back me only if the truth is worth standing beside." Gideon looked at the return fare on the shelf. "I am afraid if I stand beside you, I will ask you to stay." Her breath caught. "And I am afraid," he continued, "that you will think my wanting is another whether closing your road." Clara folded her list. "Then ask nothing until my road is open, but stand beside me tomorrow." He took off his hat, slow as prayer. "I can do that." The next morning broke white and hard. Word had spread that Prout meant to send Clara back when the rotary engine arrived. Victor came early with a team, the false consent paper, and a rope to bind Clara's trunk. He found the trunk empty. Clara had packed her books into Micah's old school satchel and left the broken trunk by the porch like a shed skin. "Where is she?" Victor demanded. Bess stood in the doorway with a skillet in her hand, teaching. In the schoolroom, Clara led 7 children through a reading lesson while Gideon hitched the big team outside. Victor stormed in, snow on his boots, and the children went silent. "You sign now," he said. Clara turned from the slate. "Not while I am teaching." "You are nothing here." Micah stood, but Gideon appeared in the doorway before the boy could speak. "Sit down, son," Gideon said. His voice was calm. "This is her room right now. Let her answer." Clara's heart moved toward him with such force that it hurt. She faced Victor. "I am the woman you left in the snow. I am the teacher these children listened to this morning. And I am the person who will ask why Abel Prout hid Red Bank coal while passengers froze." Victor's face changed just enough. There was the first crack. He reached for her arm. Gideon caught his wrist before it touched her. No twist, no show, only a stop. "No," Gideon said. Victor yanked free. "You have made this a war." "No," Clara said. "You did that when you thought a locked door was law." Victor expected the room to empty around her. Not one child moved. A small girl slid Clara's primer under both hands as if guarding it from his boots. Another boy kept reading the sentence Clara had written on the slate, though his voice shook over every word. The lesson did not stop for Victor. That small sound made his face darken more than Gideon's hand had. The rotary whistle sounded far down the valley. The train would move by afternoon. Prout would try to push Clara aboard before me could speak and before anyone opened the ice house. Gideon looked at Clara. "Still your choice." "The siding," she said. They went with the big team, Bess, Amos, and 2 mothers whose children had warmed in North Fork's schoolroom. Micah begged to come, but Gideon knelt in front of him. "You stay with Aunt Bess's sister at the ranch gate," he said. "This is not yours to fix." Micah's lip trembled, but I asked her not to go. "I know," Gideon said. "Today I am the one asking truth to stay." That was the adult choice Clara needed to see. Gideon did not hide behind his son's need. He carried his own. At Elk Horn siding, steam poured from the rotary engine. Passengers gathered on the platform, stiff and hungry. Prout stood by the baggage door with Clara's false consent paper. Victor's men loaded her broken trunk as if a woman could be shipped like freight. Me watched from the telegraph door, pale as paper. Prout saw Gideon's team and raised his voice. "North Fork credit is closed. Take your charity elsewhere." Clara stepped down from the sled before Gideon could help her. She wanted everyone to see her feet choose the boards. "Mr. Prout," she said, "open the old icehouse floor." Laughter moved through Victor's men. Prout did not laugh. His hand went to the black ticket punch. "A rejected bride has no standing in railway matters." Me flinched. Clara saw it. Gideon turned to the passengers. "Did any of you pay relief coal fees?" Hands rose, a mother with a baby, a drummer, 2 miners. Prout shouted over them, but the sound had changed. Hunger made people quiet, theft made them listen. Prout pointed at Gideon. "You touch that ice house and I will have your stock contract voided." "You already did," Gideon said. That answer landed hard because it left Prout with no next threat. Victor grabbed Clara's satchel and held it over the platform edge, above the churned snow by the tracks. "Sign," he said, "or these little books go under the rotary wheels. You can be poor and proud with no school, no clothes, and no place." Clara felt fear rise so fast it almost blinded her. Those books were her work, her past, her proof that she could build something besides obedience. Gideon moved, but Clara lifted her hand. "No," she said. Victor smiled. "No. Throw them if you want. I am done buying safety with my own silence." He threw the satchel. Gideon lunged and caught the strap before it hit the wheel housing. The rotary engineer cursed and killed the lever. Steam burst white. Passengers shouted. Victor's face emptied as he realized the engineer had seen him endanger the machine and everyone near it. Clara did not wait for the crowd to save her. She ran to the ice house, seized the iron pry bar Amos carried, and drove it under the warped floor plank. Her scarred hands screamed with pain. She drove again. Bess and one of the miners joined her. Gideon held off Victor's men with the pry bar's mate, not swinging, only standing where they would have to knock him down to stop her. Amos risked his winter wages by turning his back on Prute's freight office and helping Clara lift. The plank came up. Black coal lay under the floor in a packed, hidden mound. Red clay streaked through it like blood in dark bread. A sound went through the platform, not cheering, not yet recognition. The woman who had lowered her eyes behind the locked waiting room door stepped outside with her baby against her shoulder. My children paid to shiver while that coal sat under his floor. One miner removed his cap and stared at Prute. The second miner stepped between Prute and the coal without being asked. The woman did not look away this time. She turned so the people inside the waiting room could hear her. I watched him lock that girl out. I told myself it was not my trouble. Then my little one slept cold while he sold us what was already ours. Her words did not make her heroic. They made her honest in public, and that was harder in Elk Horn than silence had ever been. Clara lifted one coal chunk in her torn glove and held it beside the teeth of Prute's ticket punch, which he had dropped when he stepped back. The red-black dust matched so plainly even a child could understand it. The coal he claimed never arrived, Clara said, loud enough for the passengers and crew, was under his own icehouse floor while he charged you to freeze. Prute lunged for the punch and the coal ledger on the crate beside it. Me stepped out of the telegraph room and put her boot on the punch chain before he reached it. I saw Owen stack it, she said, voice shaking. I saw Prute send half to Bram's private spur. I kept quiet because my brother needed winter wages. I will write it now and I will sign my name. Prute turned on her. Your brother will never work rail again. Gideon answered before fear could take me back. He has bunk and wages at North Fork through thaw. I said it yesterday. I say it before witnesses today. Victor tried his last defense. Bram paid for that private coal. Prute merely stored it. Clara turned to him. Then, why did you throw my books under a running rotary to force a signature on a return paper? The engineer looked at Victor with hard disgust. So did every passenger who had nearly watched the machine catch the satchel. Victor opened his mouth. No words came. Prute shouted, no one touches that coal. The engineer turned his back on him and took the station key from Prute's belt. Then he lifted the freight stamp from the office crate and placed both in me Larkin's shaking hands. Until the division agent comes, the engineer said, Mrs. Larkin keeps the telegraph room. The crew takes orders by vote, and the first vote is coal to the passenger cars and North Fork team. Prute ordered the crew back to work. Not one man moved. Then the mother with the baby pointed toward the cold passenger cars, and the first coal bucket passed directly beside him. Prute grabbed for the bucket. Gideon caught his arm. Clara took the black ticket punch from me's boot and laid it on the coal pile. Leave it there, she said. It has done enough harm. Without the key, the stamp, the ledger, and obedience, Prute was only a man in a vest. The men who had feared him minutes earlier carried coal past him until the passenger cars smoked warm again. Victor tried to back toward his team, but Amos and the miner blocked the way until the engineer took down his name for the near accident. Victor lost the Bram freight favor he had bragged about before the rotary crew and half the valley. His cousin's money could not buy back the story people had seen. By sundown, heat rolled through the passenger cars. North Fork's sled carried salt, oats, and a fair coal allotment stamped by me under the engineer's eye. Me's brother rode behind with his bedroll, ashamed but not abandoned. Me rode beside Bess, already planning to send the signed telegraph when the wire steadied. Clara stood on the platform with the return fare in her pocket. The rotary had opened enough track east to take her away if she wanted. Victor's false paper had been torn and pinned to the coal shed wall as evidence. Prute sat under guard in the freight room he had once ruled. Gideon came to stand beside her, leaving a full arm's length between them. Train goes east in an hour, he said. I know. If you want that road, I will load your trunk myself. She looked at the broken trunk, mended now with rope by Amos. It had carried her away from one hard life and almost into another. She did not hate it. She simply did not need it to decide for her. And if I want the North Road, she asked. Gideon swallowed. Then North Fork still needs a winter teacher. Bess still needs someone who can make Micah do fractions without a fistfight. And I. He stopped. Clara turned to him, and you. His eyes met hers, steady and afraid. And I would like to court you properly when spring comes if you still want me after the road is open. There it was, not shelter, not debt, not a claim made in cold weather, a future offered after freedom. Clara smiled for the first time without guarding it. Spring is a long way off, Mr. Hale. You may ask before then if you remember that no is still a safe answer. His laugh was quiet and rough. Yes, ma'am. Micah met them at the ranch gate when the sled came home, bundled so round he could barely move. He saw Clara still on the sled and then looked at his father, trying not to hope too loudly. Gideon put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Miss Wynn chose the North Road tonight. She keeps the East fare in her own pocket. Micah nodded solemnly, as if this was the most important rule in the world. Maybe it was. Inside the house, Bess set an extra cup on the kitchen table, then stopped and looked at Clara. Your place or mine? Clara understood. No one would set her place without asking. She took the cup from Bess and set it between Micah's slate and Gideon's chair. Not at the head, not hidden near the stove, but where she could teach, eat, speak, and rise when she chose. Winter did not soften after that. Pruitt's hearing took weeks. Victor Bram lost the private spur contract when the division agent arrived and found passenger coal under the icehouse floor. Mee's brother worked North Fork hay through thaw and paid back part of his silence by hauling coal to the poorest cabins first. Pruitt's friends tried to punish North Fork without saying his name. A feed wagon missed the turn twice. A blacksmith who owed Gideon a plowshare suddenly claimed his iron shipment was delayed. At church, 2 women moved their children from Clara's bench because they said a rejected bride should not teach obedience. Clara wanted to pretend the words did not land. They did. She stood at the stove that night with her hands wrapped around a cup and told Bess she could move the lessons back to the station when the line opened. You could, Bess said, and every child would learn that the first shove after justice sends a woman running. Or they would learn, I do not need to be defended. Bess looked over her spectacles. Those are not the same lesson. Gideon heard the last of it from the doorway. He did not speak until Clara looked at him. Tomorrow is Saturday, he said. No lessons. I am taking salt to 3 cabins that paid Pruitt and got nothing. I could use a clerk who knows sums. The next morning, she rode beside him with the salt account on her lap. At each cabin, Gideon set the sacks down and let Clara read the names, weights, and credits. When the third man tried to thank Gideon instead of her, Gideon stepped back. Miss Wynn keeps the account, he said. Thank her straight. The man removed his hat. Thank you, Miss Wynn. At the second cabin, a woman tried to press 2 nickels into Gideon's palm for the salt. He closed her fingers around the coins and nodded toward Clara's ledger. The account was already paid at the station, Clara said. Mr. Pruitt took money twice. North Fork will not. The woman looked at the careful figures, then at Clara's scarred hand holding the pencil. Then write that my boys owe you kindling when the road clears. Clara wrote it down because charity could shame a hungry house, but honest exchange let it stand upright. That small correction traveled faster than the thaw. By the following week, 2 mothers who had moved their children away sent them back with slate pencils and stiff apologies. Clara accepted the children first. The apologies took longer, and she let them take longer. The return fare stayed in the top drawer of Clara's desk through all of it. The children knew it was there. Gideon knew it was there. No one touched it. Its quiet weight made every lesson truer. One evening in late February, Clara found Gideon mending the schoolroom latch. It had stuck during the cold snap. He had taken the whole plate off and cleaned it by lamplight. Bess says hinges matter more than keys, Clara said. Bess is usually right. Do not tell her I admitted it. Clara sat beside him on the bench. Their shoulders almost touched. "Gideon," she said, "when spring comes I may still keep the fare." His hands stilled, then he nodded. "Good. That is not the answer most men would give. Most men did not watch what a locked door did to you." She reached out and placed her scarred hand over his. He looked at it, then at her, and waited. "You may ask now," she said. He turned his hand under hers, palm up, giving her the choice to hold or leave. "Clara Wynn, when the pass opens and every road is yours, may I court you with the hope of becoming your husband?" She held his hand. "Yes," she said, "with every road open." He bowed his head over their joined hands, and for a moment the house was so quiet she could hear Micah reciting multiplication in the kitchen and Bess pretending not to cry. When the first thaw broke the drifts, Gideon hitched the sled, now on wheels, and drove Clara to Elk Horn siding. The repaired trunk sat behind them. Micah rode with Bess in the second wagon, trying to look brave. The eastbound train stood ready, smoke lifting into a clean blue sky. Clara stepped onto the platform where Victor had once thrown her books. The waiting room door stood open. Prute's replacement, Me Larkin herself, until the railway sent a permanent agent, nodded from the telegraph window. Clara took the return fare from her pocket. Gideon did not speak. She walked to the ticket window and slid the fare across to me. "Can this be changed?" Me smiled. "To where?" Clara looked back at Gideon, then at Micah, then at the open road north. "To school supplies from Helena. Primer books, chalk, and a wall map big enough to show every road out and every road home." Me stamped the exchange in plain view. Gideon came to her then, stopping one step away. "Still yes?" he asked softly. Clara took his hand in front of the open waiting room door. "Still yes, and still mine to answer." Micah ran ahead to carry the new chalk box, but Gideon did not let the boy carry the ending. He lifted the map himself, tucked it under one arm, and offered Clara the other as they walked back to the wagon together. Clara climbed into the wagon by herself, placed the new primers beside her, and looked once at the eastbound train without fear. Behind her, the station door stayed open. Subscribe for more clean, romantic Wild West stories where rejected brides, lonely ranchers, and brave frontier women find home by choice.